10:30 p.m. This meeting is being conducted on a remote electronic basis using Zoom with live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, and the regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 5:39-1.5, I hereby announce that adequate notice and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in a notice dated January 6, 2021, that was sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, posted on the bulletin board and on the main access door at Township Hall, filed in the clerk's office, and posted on the Township website, www.holmdeltownship.com. Please be advised that the agenda for tonight's meeting is also available for download on the Township website. Members of the public wishing to provide comment at the designated times may do so over the Zoom platform by clicking the raised hand button or by dialing *9 if accessing this meeting by telephone. Public commenters are asked to provide their name and address prior to comment and shall be limited to 3 minutes. Public comments may not include disruptive conduct such as profanity. Public commenters are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed over the internet, which will be archived on the Township's YouTube and Facebook pages, and that recordings of the public meeting are public records subject to the Open Public Records Act. Mayor Bontempo?
Here.
Ms. Weber?
Here.
Mr. Critelli?
Here.
DJ Lucarelli?
Here.
Mr. Santana?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Wendy. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our troops, both home and abroad, who work tirelessly to protect us each and every day. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Holmdel Township Committee meeting, April 27, 2021. Before we kick into the agenda items, I want to open for plenty public comment on agenda items for tonight's agenda. So for a public comment at the front of the meeting, I ask that you state your name, your address, and for this portion, which agenda item you'd like to make a comment or have a question on. Carrie?
The first public comment is Roberta.
Thank you very much. I am speaking to ask you to table ordinance.
Roberta, please state your name, address, and then which agenda item you're speaking about.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, I believe I know Roberta's going to speak on ordinance because I heard her start to say it, and I know there's been emails 2021-14. That has its own separate public hearing. I just wanted to note.
Does that mean I should speak later in the meeting, or do you want my comments now?
Well, I think when we will read the ordinance into the record, the clerk will read it, and then we'll take any comments or questions from the public before it's voted on. So probably that would be the most appropriate time to comment on that ordinance, Roberta.
And that way, Mayor, the comments will be in the record with respect to that specific ordinance.
Thank you.
And there are no other hands up at this time, Mayor.
Okay. None being seen, I will close public comment. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda, resolutions 2020-115 to 2020-124. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes, and I have a note on item 2021-122. Do I state that now, or is that?
Is that a recusal, your committeeman you're putting on the record?
What's that?
Is that a recusal?
No, I just had a question about it, and I didn't know if now is the appropriate time to speak about it or after.
Yeah, probably better to clear it
Oh,
up
okay.
before we vote.
So when I reread it tonight, I just wanted some clarification because the bid was awarded at the cost of 128.5, but then in the verbiage on here it says that it is being recommended that the award be made to ABC Services in a lump sum 2021 contract price of $63,250 with an alternate number 2 contract with the additional $10,000. So I just didn't understand, what is the actual contract for? Is it for $63,250 or is it for $128.5?
Through you, Mayor, it's a 2-year contract.
Okay.
I just want to double check from my recollection, it's a 2-year contract. So the first year, it's the remainder of 2021, which is the 63,250. And then for the following year, it's the 73,250.
Thank you, Sharon. I didn't see that written like that, so I appreciate the clarification.
My pleasure.
So do you want to recuse yourself or you want to vote on that?
I apologize. I will remove my note and vote on yes for the consent agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Ms. Weber,
Yes, with a note.
Mayor Bontempo.
Yes.
Okay, so resolutions 2021-115 to 2021-124 have all been successfully passed.
Thank you, Wendy. Next
welcome.
introduction of ordinance, Wendy.
Introduction of 2021-17, which is an ordinance establishing section 26-9 titled Qualified Disabled Veteran Property Tax Exemptions. Motion to adopt on first reading and publish in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for May 11th, 2021.
Go to motion.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Catali? Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes,
Mayor Bontempo.
Yes.
2021-17 will be published in the newspaper and set for public hearing for May 11th.
So before you do the hearing on 2021-11, Sharon, you want to take over for this ordinance for me?
and me.
Happy to.
Go ahead.
So the next ordinance, Wendy, if you want to read the title.
Sure. The hearing on ordinance 2021-11 is an ordinance establishing procedure and standards regarding deployment of small wireless facilities in public rights of way in the township of Holmdel.
Okay. So public hearing, Wendy, do we have any members of the public that want to speak on 2021-11?
I don't see any hands up at this time, Sharon.
Okay, motion to close public hearing and adopt ordinance 2021-11.
Move.
Move Committeeman Santana.
Yep.
And do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Committeeman Curtelli, roll call, please.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
No, she's
All right.
accusing
She-
herself.
I know, but she should say it for the record.
I'm recused for the
Okay.
record.
Mayor Bontempo.
Recuse.
So 2021-11 has been successfully passed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next ordinance for a hearing is 2021-14, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Holmdel to recognize and protect critical environment sites within the Metropolitan Planning Area, PAI.
And Mayor, we have our special counsel, Andy Bayer, here to speak on this ordinance before we open it up to the public. If that's okay with you and the committee?
Absolutely. Council, you'd like to kind of touch on this, please?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that.
All good.
Thank you, Mayor and Township Committee. Nice to see everyone. The background to this ordinance is this is related to the 100% affordable housing, is related to the 100% affordable housing development in the township's affordable housing plan known as the Middle Road site. There was by way of where there are 50 units in your court-approved affordable housing plan slated for this site. The township entered into in December of 2019, entered into a developers agreement with the Walters Group, who would be developing this site on behalf of the township. Through the development process, there was a dispute concerning the planning areas. There's something called the state planning map that's been issued since around 1999-2000 era. And the state planning map showed this site, the Middle Road site, the DEP mapping from that planning map showed the site split between a planning area 1 and a planning area 2. And it was relevant for the development of the site because the site's also in CAFRA, which is a DEP regulation, and it relates to the impervious coverage that's allowed for the development. So to clear up the dispute between whether the site was in a PA1, planning area 1, or a planning area 2, the Walters Group last year made an application to the State Planning Commission to change this site, the Middle Road site, to a PA1 that would allow 30% impervious coverage at the site and allow greater setbacks that the buildings were proposed on from the Hazlet border. There were a number of hearings before the State Planning Commission last fall, and ultimately on January 6th of this year, the State Planning Commission approved the change in planning area from a PA2, planning area 2, to a planning area 1. And it did it because the State Planning Commission noted it doesn't change planning areas just for one piece of property. So it changed the mapping from the planning area from the Hazlet border to the New Jersey Transit line. While that process was going on, the township had its planner, Paul Phillips, analyze the impact of whether that would impact development patterns or development from the Hazlet border to the New Jersey Transit line. And Mr. Phillips indicated that that change in planning area would not. Number one, the underlying zoning stays in place. Number two, most of the sites in this area are where properties are developed already. The underlying zoning in the area is commercial zoning and RO3 zoning, TMH03 zoning, B2 zoning, and some single family and townhouse zoning. So it's fairly, as this portion of Holmdel, as everyone here would know, a more developed portion of town. The Planning Commission, in approving the change, requested and was concerned about preservation of critically environmental areas. And so it conditioned its approval on the township adopting an ordinance protecting critically environmental sites. And so, and that would generally include wetlands and your typical DEP protected environmental areas. So what the ordinance you have before you tonight does exactly that. It codifies in your code what was also going to be in the state planning map, that these sorts of restrictions would be included in the state planning map, because this ordinance is important for two reasons. One is it protects and the critical environmental areas within the township, number one, and number two, it would allow and furthers allows the development of the Middle Road site in conformance with this mapping. And as I've discussed in public before, if the township doesn't approve or take action to further development of sites in your court-approved plan, you could be at risk for builder's remedy. And we've always, over the many years we've been involved in the affordable housing process, sought to avoid that. So that is the gist of it.
So Andy, just to net what you're saying, this ordinance does not dramatically change any zoning that's in place and allow developers to come in and put in multi-story buildings or change anything that isn't currently acceptable today.
Correct. You are exactly right, Mayor. Not at all. The underlying zoning stays in effect. In fact, it makes development more difficult because it overlays critical environmental areas because the ordinance says that critical environmental sites shall be preserved. That's like the first sentence in subsection A. So yes, if anything, it limits development.
Thank you. Anybody from the Township Committee have any questions for Counselor?
Yeah, I do, if you don't mind. Mr. Bayer, so could you tell us why the State Planning Commission chose all the areas all the way up to the transit line? Is there a reason why they chose?
Well, again, yeah, sure. So it's more of a planner's question, but the Planning Commission was very firm. The application initially was just for the Middle Road site, but they prefer to look at areas. They would not approve the Middle Road site in and of itself, and they thought the area to the transit line, I believe, was consistent in the development patterns that were present from the Hazlet border to that area. I could also represent to you, and this is all public, that the Township of Hazlet had interceded in this proceeding before the State Planning Commission, and they were arguing through that process that the planning area should go down to the Bell Works area. So they were seeking a far greater expansive extension of the PA1, and the Planning Commission agreed with the township's planner's position and its own position really in that regard, and rejected Hazlitt's argument.
So if I understand you correctly, we had no way to negotiate that line, to move that line further up north.
Well, we fought to keep it where it was. That the Planning Commission, when it issued its initial, they have a subcommittee that looks at these things, and there were a number of hearings before this subcommittee. And when it looked at the line to the transit area, their position was they weren't going any further north than that. And then that's why we had the planner take a look and see what development impact, if any, that would have. So that was how that ended up there.
And just to add to what Andy's saying, the Planning Commission won't just look at a specific property. They look at the entire area, which is why, although the Walters Group requested just the property that they're looking to develop on, the Planning Commission will only look at the general area and have to have a specific area for consideration.
And Sean, I think what Andy just said was important, that our township planner also reviewed all this, and he was in agreement that this was okay based on where we're at, and it was not going to cause any harm to the township.
Yes, and the planning board planner has submitted consistency to the planning board. Again, this actual ordinance just makes it even more difficult to develop in the area, which is something that the State Planning Commission wanted the Township Committee to do as they made this change, which will facilitate the Middle Road development project, which is part of our settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing, risking or not, that project not being able to develop will risk our settlement agreement.
Good.
and potentially put the township in jeopardy of builder's remedy.
Anybody else?
One more question, if you don't mind. Given the new designation, what are the consequences? What could potentially change in the way we develop that area?
So in my view, the development patterns can only change if the committee changes the zoning for the underlying site. The zoning remains in effect. Again, this overlay that the planning commission asked was a further buffer against development in the environmental areas, but I don't think there can be any additional change unless two circumstances. One is you as a committee change the zoning to allow for it, subject to the environmental constraints that would be present, or two, there's a use variance granted by the zoning board on a particular site. That would be the only circumstances under which the development pattern could change there from your current zoning.
And there are a lot of environmental areas in this particular area. So CAFRA also applies to this, which would have to get approvals from the DEP on top of that. So there would be several steps that need to happen prior to any development coming in.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Good. Carrie, when do you open up for public comment?
First public comment is Roberta.
Okay. Roberta, just state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. Roberta Kaufman, 13 Chestnut Ridge Road. I would like to say that I do not think this is a good decision. Planning Area 1 is similar to areas in Newark. Not that I know that is overstating the situation. Maybe we should talk about it as similar to areas along high density corridors in more amenable locations, but it still opens us to high density. Planning, we all know, and many of us have lived through zoning changes that happened within 6 weeks. The state plan and redevelopment plan provides an overall umbrella to keep us in a logical constraint. It provides, and it shows that we have been hamstrung, or in essence made to look at this a second time, because the developer himself, trying to put too much density on this Mount Laurel property, was slowed down by the state plan. Well, let's look at the situation. We're talking about, for a 5 or 3.89 acre location that needs to be higher density because we are putting too much on one piece of property. This opens up approximately 800 acres, eyeballing, north of the railroad tracks, to that same kind of density over time. The town will be sued. People will come in and want that higher density consistent with Planning Area 1. We have opened ourselves over the next 5-10 years to all kinds of higher density that we were not anticipating, that would not be consistent with, I think at one time we talked about a population top of about 21,000 people in this town. I'm sure we're well above that even now. 800 acres north of the railroad tracks and change from suburban to metropolitan planning area. And the status seems to have been done before many of us were aware of it. And I understand you're under constraints, but I think that we will pay a terrible price over time for changing 800 acres. Now, I know you're speaking about critical environmental sites. And, you know, I served 16 years on the Environmental Commission and 5 years on the Planning Board. I am completely aware of this, how the Wakeake Creek and the Mahoris Creek transit this area. And that doesn't encompass remotely anything close to the limiting the kind of development we will see over time in a Planning Area 1. We have totally thrown out the plan, the state plan, as any support for erratic zoning changes and for more suits by developers to have even what they call, I'm not thinking of the correct word, but what they would say, if you've allowed that kind of density on one property, why not another property? This area is ripe for tear down and redevelopment. That's why it's called the State Development Plan. We have a possibility over time of revisiting the issue and a good issue of whether or not there should be a train station in Holmdel, whether or not the Revlon property or the underused mall should be redeveloped for high density apartment buildings. Well done, fine quality, with people with walkable distance to a train station. You know, I mean, as we have the pressure and the good pressure for more affordable housing, and I'm not speaking here against affordable housing, and please don't misunderstand me. We will also have the pressure for logical transit development as climate warming and all these issues become to the fore in the next 5 and 10 years. And all of this, we are opening ourselves up to pressure. We need to find a different solution. And I am asking you tonight not to pass this there. I have no problem with protecting critical environmental sites. I'm asking you right this moment to table this and not to pass it, because this is the final thing required to confirm the planning area 1 status. And I want us to revisit it. This is not a good deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Carrie, anybody else in queue?
The next public comment is Regina Crisione.
Regina, just please state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me? Yes,
Yep.
I am. Regina Crisione, Criscione, 35 Rambling Brook Drive. I'd like to know if this was noticed sometime around December of 2019, if there was any opportunity for public input around the time that this was originally done.
I would refer, are you referring to the proceedings at the State Planning Commission?
No, didn't this originate at the township?
No.
It was a petition that was filed by the Walters Group. The township has, been part of discussions and understandings that they were going to the State Planning Commission, but I think any notice requirement would be held by the State Planning Commission. And I know Mr. Bayer has been part of those proceedings. I'm confident
Yeah,
they were properly handled.
Right. Yes, all the notice requirements and the resolution approving the planning commission's decision notes it, but all of the notice requirements of the state planning commission were met. It included property owners, I believe. And the township wasn't part of it. That was the Walters Group, but it was because I know the township of Hazlet participated, so they received notice. It's similar to a planning board notice. So
I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't understand. If we're changing the zoning on a large portion of Holmdel.
But you're not.
Just to clarify, we
No,
are
not zoning.
changing
I'm
the
sorry.
zoning.
Planning area designation of a large portion of land on Holmdel. Holmdel residents are not made aware?
If I could, first, I guess through the mayor, maybe we'll let the commenter make all the comments, but we certainly have information to respond to that issue.
Okay, that's one question. And my other question is, where are the critical environmental sites along the Route 35 corridor?
Wait, is that Regina?
There's one on the Middletown border, I know.
Okay.
But my concern is behind Dearborn, there's a lot of open space. The TZ Green property is a lot of open space. What, other than the zoning of the township committee, what is there to prevent 4 and 5 and 6 story apartment buildings going there? The township committee can change in 3 years, and pro-development people could be on the township committee and say, let's just change the zoning. As Roberta said, we have the layer of the extra PA2 or whatever they are. There are a lot of different zones. I keep saying zones, I mean planning areas in place. If we change that to PA1, we only have one layer now. And that seems very dangerous to me.
So the first question is notice, second one, environmental areas. What else?
That's it. That's my second. The first one is about public input.
Yep, we got it. Okay. Council, you want to start or do you want?
I'll just note, and Mr. Bayer can piggyback on me. It's funny, he and I chatted before the meeting, and I suggested, and we exchanged a copy of the State Planning Commission resolution, which is on point here. But state regulation does require noticing similar to the 200-foot noticing that is commonly known under the municipal land use law. And the State Planning Commission sets forth that they did properly notice in accordance with state regulation. And that was done prior to the January 6th, 2021 action that they took, Trenton. I'll refer over to Andy for the critical areas.
Well, again, not a planner, I believe.
Yeah, I know. Our
There's a
planner
map.
was,
Yeah, there's a map, the planner wasn't available. There is a map that was attached to I believe, the report that was submitted that showed that. But I want to address the time sensitiveness of it, and I would suggest it's extremely time sensitive to take action on this tonight and not push it back for the main reason that the Middle Road project has received tax credit financing from the New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency. And there are deadlines within which the project needs to be built. I think it's within 2 years of getting the tax credit financing. And the developer still has to go back to the planning board for consideration. And so we don't, this project from that perspective is we don't want to risk losing those tax credit financings for not perfecting something that the state took, action that the state took here. And in terms of I think there was a statement made about losing a layer of protection. And I would respectfully disagree with that notion in this regard, which is that the township has two mechanisms to control zoning. One obviously is the direct power of this committee. And obviously that can change. I mean, but that's up to the voters, but ultimately the committee controls the zoning. And two is that the planning board also controls the master plan, and which would recommend zoning for this area. And so unless there's a wholesale change in the way Holmdel approaches development, this planning area change will not impact any future development. And honestly, the only change would be on properties covered could be theoretically, would be properties that are covered by CAFRA, because there's properties in this PA1 which are not within CAFRA. So this ordinance wouldn't, well, the planning area change wouldn't do anything. And just so we're clear, this ordinance doesn't change the planning area, but the state did that. But so those are my comments.
And I think Andy hit a lot of the things I was about to say. That the only other addition I want to note is we can discuss hypothetical potential changes of things that might happen in the future versus the very real possibility of a developer coming in and suing Holmdel with a builder's remedy lawsuit because we're not meeting our fair share settlement obligation.
Yeah.
And that would
Right.
trigger-
Well, I'm sorry, if I could just piggyback, then I'll stop, I promise, on what Sharon just said. So what the resident indicated there was concern a builder could sue. Actually, what we have in place now is because the committee approved because the court approved our settlement agreement with fair share, we have immunity from builder's remedy through July 1, 2025. So right now, to perfect and continue that immunity from the kinds of litigation that's been raised, that is, this is what we would need to do. So that's all. Thanks.
So, well, let me just ask one more question. So if we don't follow up on this, if we don't approve this ordinance, do we still have the immunity from builder's remedy?
Well, the answer is that a developer would come in and that didn't get our approved, that was not included in our plan, and said that, and would argue that the township has foiled or prevented the development of our own project, which is the Middle Road project, and that therefore a developer could come in and seek to have our immunity removed or taken away by the court and substitute its site for something we have chosen. So that's what could happen if this isn't approved.
Andy, you touched on one thing before that I think is important. Does every, because you represent a lot of towns, does every town's project getting tax credits?
No, actually, just right. That's a good point, Mayor. So so there's all the state does it by rounds, and there's one round a year usually. This past year, there were 5 other projects statewide that were awarded, and this project actually received what's called the Commissioner's Award, meaning the Department of Community Affairs Commissioner specially awarded this project in her discretion. So yes, that's so the state really does look very favorably upon the Middle Road project and was very complimentary of the committee and the township generally in approving it to date.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry?
The next public comment is Carol.
Hi, Carol, just please state your name and address for the record, please. Carol, are you muted? You're muted on my screen. Can you unmute her, Wendy? Okay, now I have you unmuted. I'm muted. Wendy, is it possible to unmute her? Can you do it or no? No?
I believe she's doing it on her own. Right now, it says she's not muted.
Okay. Okay, yep, off mute. If you're speaking, we cannot hear you. Did we have this problem last week?
Yes, sir.
It perhaps might be a microphone issue on the resident side. I would recommend going on our website and finding the phone number and calling in.
Yep.
Some computers don't have a microphone. I don't know the tech of the resident, but that could be the issue.
Okay. Perfect. Pull you out.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
Good.
Can you hear me?
Now we hear you.
You can hear me? Yes?
Yep.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, I have a couple questions. Can you,
So first, name and address for the record before you start with your question.
I'm sorry, Carol Balmer, Balmer, 4 Sproutley Lane, Middletown.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay. I think you said this was settled in January 2020. Is that correct? Is that when this all came about?
So we'll go through all your questions and then I'll have the professionals answer.
Okay. Also, I wanted to get more specifications on the tax credits, exactly how much we're going to receive in tax credits. And I also wanted to know as far as how the Walker development actually fits into this plan as well, because there seems to be environmental constraints on the Walker property too on Middle Road. And is this going to apply or are they grandfathered?
Are those all your questions?
Yeah, so far. Yes.
Mayor, if I could just note one thing with the ordinance hearing and our public hearings, we typically give everyone one crack at it, so please ask all your questions at once.
Okay,
As opportunity.
as far as the mapping is concerned, did the State Planning Commission actually walk areas of Holmdel to see how much environmentally sensitive lands we have north of the railroad tracks, or is this a schematic?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, planning area 1 encompasses how many acres? Okay, I have to ask more, right?
Well, you can ask whatever you want. We're not going to respond until you're done.
Okay, and I'd like to go back to public participation again. Were the property owners in planning area 2, now planning area 1, duly notified, as Regina was referring to, and when were they notified, and how do we get a hold of the verification of that? And also the resolution by the planning commission as well. How do we get a hold of that? Okay, that's it for now.
Okay. Okay, she's done. Carrie, you can take her out of queue. Council, you want to start with any of the questions that were brought?
Sure. So the State Planning Commission approved the planning area change at its January 6, 2021 meeting. There were a number of what I've called their subcommittee. I think they call it their PIC. They have a lot of acronyms, PIC. They had meetings as well. There were at least 2 of those between October and December those meetings were noticed. And then, as I said, the Planning Commission issued its final decision in January of this year. Our affordable housing litigation was settled. I'm not sure what the question went to. That was settled in, I believe the last settlement was 2019. And that was then also approved by the court. That in that year, the tax credits, well, actually, it was approved in 19, and then part of the plan was approved in 2020 by the court. The tax credits are not to Holmdel. Those are issued to the developer, the Walters Group, and they got what's called 9% tax credits. And that's a means that the developer, that they give, because there's no market rate units in this project, and the rents for the units are restricted. That's what makes them affordable under state law. The developer needs financings from other sources, and so that the 9% tax credits are issued to the developer by the state. So that doesn't go to the township. There was a question about whether the critical environmental areas were mapped, or how were they mapped? I don't know if they have planners on who work for the state DCA, State Planning Commission, who made their findings available to the executive director of the State Planning Commission. I assume they looked at DEP mapping. I'm not assuming, I don't know, but I don't know for sure whether they actually walked the areas in question. And in terms of the verification of the notice, the Walters Group, as the applicant did notice that, as Mr. Collins pointed out, we could supply that to the township as they submitted proof of their notice to the Planning Commission. So I could track down a copy of that. And I think that is most of it.
I don't think we have the exact acreage of the.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Available. It's the property above the railroad tracks. And anecdotally, I do believe I remember in one of our meetings, the State Planning Commission director talking about being on the site, but I don't know what that meant beyond that they had been there.
Yeah, I guess.
Covered everything else, Andy.
Andy, if they want a copy of the resolution, and contact the State Planning Commission.
Yes, and then yes, or it's probably on file at the township. They could probably make an open request to the township as well, because we were sent a copy of it. So.
Okay.
But either way.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
It's a public record. There's no issue with that.
Okay. Absolutely.
And and just so we're clear, the Planning Commission resolution identifies all the lots and blocks impacted by the change. So one would have to just put together all that to figure out the acreage, but yes.
Okay. Thank you. Carrie?
The next public comment is Karen Strickland.
Hello,
Yep.
this is
Hi, Karen.
Karen Strickland at 26 Hayward Hills Drive.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I gotta say, I feel quite bamboozled by this. I know that I'm supposed to be on top of things and paying attention to township events. I missed the idea of what this was about. Back about 30 years ago, I lived in a real rural area in Virginia. And my father-in-law was on the Planning Commission of Fairfax County, Virginia. And I lived outside Charlottesville. And I was saying to my father-in-law, how can we kind of protect the area of Albemarle County that I live in? And he, from Fairfax County, which if you know Fairfax County, Virginia, is where now Tyson's Corners is, and huge, huge high rises. So in my lifetime, I went from seeing very rural area to 30-story high buildings all around the Tyson's Corner area in Virginia. So anyway, my father-in-law on the planning board said, what you have to do is you have to keep public water and public sewer as far away from you as you possibly can. Because as soon as you start bringing these utilities in, the land becomes much more valuable and people are going to want to develop it. So I moved up here to New Jersey and near farms. And I feel like moving this land from planning area 2, which you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, which I understand planning area 2 allows for 30% coverage of the land. Planning area 1 allows for 60% coverage of the land. So suddenly you're taking land that only was permissible for 30% coverage and saying, no, go ahead, 60% can be covered. All of a sudden that land becomes much more valuable. And I saw eyes roll when someone before me said, oh, they'll sue because they want to be able to build on the land. But that's perfectly true. I mean, right now we're making a decision because of fear of builder's remedy. And yet we're putting 800 acres into a situation that someone else is going to come in and say, hey, planning area 1, we need to develop, that 35 corridor. You guys have all moved around the country. You've seen what happens to places. Now, I'm not opposed to the middle road development. I think that we need to have it. I think it was a good idea. But I don't think that because we need to be somehow to accommodate the planning area 1 and 2, in that situation, we should give up another 700 plus acres to whatever whims come along. And I know I hear, oh, we protect with zoning, but the first level of defense is that planning area. So I would really respectfully ask you to kind of slow down on this, see if there's some other way that we can continue to have that middle road property developed and not be giving up 800 acres, because I fear for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So the one question I gathered from that, Andy, was the coverage change of 30% to 60%. You want to just respond to that?
Sure. Yes. Well, two things. One is, this is the area in town where there is sewer already. It's the southern half of Holmdel that doesn't have sewer, and which was a criticism by the affordable housing advocates and as to our plan as to the township's affordable housing plan. But we were making actually the argument that the residents making, which is it should be in areas where there is sewer already, and this area is sewered. In terms of the coverage, the planning area change only changes the coverage for properties that are within CAFRA, and and there are limited properties within CAFRA within this planning area. And so it doesn't change the coverage limitations for most of the site, for most of this area. It just changes the areas that are included within CAFRA from 30% to actually 80%. But that's not most of this area, because most of the area is not within, there's very few properties in Holmdel that are actually located within CAFRA. And what our planner had noted in his report is that the planning area 1 and 2 are quite similar, because both, and this is looking at it from a state planning analysis, both are considered smart growth areas where development should be considered. And that's whether it's a PA1 or a PA2. So you don't get to really, the state plan when you get to PA4 and PA5, when you're looking at large farmland areas and the pine lands and that kind of thing, where development is not encouraged, but this is not that. So it's not quite as significant as we're concerned, as was noted.
Andy, would you mind just touch on what, I don't know if people listening just understand what CAFRA actually means, what that designation is for, because it's very specific. I know it's down the shore. When you have beachfront property, you are responsible for CAFRA regulations on the building, right? There's certain requirements and such, just so a little edification of what it is.
Yeah, so you're right. It's I'm trying to get the coast.
Coastal Area Facilities Act.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Again, we're in the acronym world here. We're
Yeah.
short. But yes, so this was always, whenever we looked at this middle road site, the planners over the years, whether it's the whoever planner the township had relied on, it was always a surprise that Holmdel had any property within CAFRA, because obviously there's a little distance between Bell and the beach or the water, but it's related to like one sliver of a stream that goes across in this area. So there are there are development restrictions. It's like doing wetland, getting wetland permitting from DEP. You would need to meet all of the requirements. You can't build on wetlands. You can't build within 100 feet of wetlands, whatever those requirements are. There are similar type requirements for development under the DEP CAFRA rules as well. So,
and there are still regulations on properties under CAFRA. So there's permitting that needs to come on CAFRA area property when it's being built on. So there are several layers that a potential developer would need to go through prior to being able to develop with or without this change.
Yeah, it's not just the impervious coverage. There are many, as Sharon's pointing out, there are many other regulations which apply. I mean, as anyone who's been on the planning board or the zoning board would see applications, if they saw any sites that were within CAFRA, there's usually a specialist that the developers retain to provide information on those sorts of DEP issues to the boards. So,
and just to kind of expand on CAFRA, I just pulled up a map. I'm not so sure I could share my screen with our setup, but CAFRA and Holmdel is literally the uppermost northeast corner. It probably covers just a couple of blocks. And if you look at the DEP statute that establishes CAFRA, it actually literally names each street turn by turn and what constitutes the CAFRA boundary, everything to the eastward portion of it, in an attempt to protect the coast. So it starts up a little north of Holmdel and it continues all the way down the coast. But the Holmdel portion is rather small, and that's the property at issue here.
So could they not have designated just those areas under as PA1 instead of having to classify a broader area?
I don't think, again, I can't speak for the State Planning Commission, but I don't think they looked at it. They were not looking at it from just a straight CAFRA standpoint. I think they there's, again, not a plan. It's footnote everything I say, but I'm not a planner, but just from the discussion that went on before the Planning Commission, and there's a lot of other planning factors that go into these planning area designations. The thing that happened to trigger it for Holmdel to have to, and Walters to have to look at it, was that this middle road site happens to be within CAFRA. But yeah, it's not just CAFRA. There's other planning area considerations.
Thank you.
Perfect, Mike.
Yeah, so I was able to, I think Wendy gave me privileges to share a screen here. So do you see my cursor, Mayor?
Yep.
So this is Holmdel Township, and the top right is the portion of it that falls within CAFRA. The dark green is the CAFRA zone that certain state regulations apply to, and it obviously goes all the way down the coast, but just a sliver of Holmdel falls within.
Maybe if you can you enlarge it or no?
Sure, I'll try.
Just because the green is so small in Holmdel, it's kind of hard to see where it is.
Yeah, exactly. So you see the two rivers, obviously this is the Navesink River, Red Bank, Middletown, and then Holmdel right here.
So that little part of the triangle on the top of Holmdel, Mike.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's where the middle road falls in.
Correct. I should give Andy same footnote that I'm not a planner, but doing what I can here.
Okay.
That was impressive, Mike. That's
Thank you.
That's very impressive for a lawyer to do that. That's very technology. You're far better than I. But you're also younger.
Buddy. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Carrie, anybody else in queue?
Next public comment is James Yanello.
Okay.
Good evening, Jay Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. Mr. Bear, respectfully, I need to check or flag you on your statement earlier about it would take a wholesale change in the governing body or planning boards or whatever in this town to dramatically change the building cadence or anything. We've seen, unfortunately, in the history of this town, one or two bodies change, and we could have dramatic upheaval and the desire to develop certain areas that have caused the residents to sue and petition to block it. So respectfully, you don't know Holmdel as well as some of us, and unfortunately, a few bodies change can cause dramatic change in development desires. Beyond that, you mentioned that the Middle Road project, which has these tax credits, won an award or whatever you want to call it. It was very favorably looked upon by Fair Share or whatever body. And I'm just curious, I thought, I'm not an expert on this, but I thought dense, no market rate developments were looked less favorably upon. So I'm just curious why this one area is so favorably looked upon. Thank you.
So there are, I guess if I can, Mayor, that's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there are really two types of housing projects that towns can use to meet their affordable housing. Well, there's more than two, but there are two primary ones are either inclusionary projects that have market rate units with the affordable housing set aside of anywhere from 15 to 20 something %. Or there's what, like this is a 100%, the rules allow for these 100% affordable housing projects. And so the benefit to the 100% projects are, and one reason that Holmdel had approved this site was that there are no market rate units that go with the affordable units. So if there's typically a 20% set aside to get 50 units, well, I'm not have to do math, but 20% of 250. Yeah. So to get 50 affordable housing units in the standard inclusionary project, you would need 250 total units if there were. So it would be 200 market and 50 affordable to get to that 20% set aside. So to avoid that density here, the 100% project, we got 50 affordable housing credits for only 50 total units. So that's, and so that these are, and when I say the state favors these projects, I can tell you that in this past affordable housing round, all the hundreds of towns that went through this process included 100% projects as part of their affordable housing strategy, and the state this past year only funded 6 of them. So it's very, so clearly the state liked this project, like the developer that the township had selected, the Walters Group. They've done these projects successfully elsewhere and have built really nice projects. So there's a, so that's all I meant by that. But yeah, it's a way to avoid density, which is what Holmdel was looking to do in meeting its affordable housing obligation.
So Andy, based on what you just said, so that the tax credits given to 6 projects, there's over 500 municipalities in the state, right? Everybody has some type of affordable housing obligation to some extent, some small, some could be large, some could be larger than ours. So to get that award is very significant because there's other projects that have to be fulfilled, right? That they're not getting any tax credit. So it could be on the town's back or the taxpayer's back, right? To fulfill that need, because end of the day, right, it's got to be filled. And if you don't do this project, doesn't get the tax credits get approved, then your statement before about fulfilling 250 units to get you the 50 could come into play.
Mayor, yeah, spot on, which is right. So if a project doesn't get 9% tax credit financing, There is a funding program called 4% tax credits, which is far less competitive, but it also gives the developers a lot less money towards their project. And then the towns or projects that rely on the 4% credits, those developers look to the municipality to fund the difference. So I can tell you in another town, there was a project, and if it didn't get, it was 100 units, I think, yeah, 100. And if it doesn't get, it hasn't been applied for yet, but if it doesn't get 9% tax credits, the town is potentially looking at a bill of $7-8 million of its own money to assist the project. So again, that was something here. This project scored well and competitively under the tax credit rules. And that's another reason the state looked favorably upon it. But yes, taxpayer money would be at risk if you wanted to fund this project if you didn't get the 9% credit.
And that $7-8 million investment doesn't mean that they're part owner. It means that they just have to help subsidize the project, correct?
It's a gift.
Correct.
Yeah, right. No, you don't have equity. Give it to the developer.
I just want to be clear so people aren't confused because it could get going.
Yeah, no, you're right on it. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anybody else in public, Harry?
There are no other hands up at this time, Mayor.
With none being seen.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
I have one question in the Q&A, which I should read.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Michael Whitmore, and he said that he is confused. He said, what makes you say that only the CAFRA would be applicable to the new metropolitan designation? He stated, the map I am looking at shows everything north of the tracks being metropolitan designation. He said, this seems disastrous. Why are we considering voting yes? And that's it.
So the distinction, we discussed this before, that I made is that the coverage limitation only changes with the planning area on those properties within CAFRA. There's no change in anything in the properties within the PA1 that would be included in PA1 that are also not included within CAFRA. There is no change to the coverage limitation only applies to the CAFRA part, to the CAFRA properties. So there wouldn't be any change to those, the vast majority of the properties within the PA1 in that regard.
Maybe that question came in before, Andy, before some of the other ones were answered. Wendy, anything else that you have to read into the record?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm being seen, I'll close public comments on this. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Critelli,
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli,
Yes.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Ms. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo.
Yes.
Okay, so ordinance 2021-14 has been successfully adopted and will be published in the Asbury Park Press according to law.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. And the
Good
next.
night. Good night, everyone. Nice seeing everyone.
Thanks, Andy.
Good night,
Thank you,
Andy.
Thank you for jumping on, Andy.
Thanks for being a planner tonight.
I'm not a planner, but
Pinch hitting.
Good night. Okay, the next ordinance for adoption is 2021-16, which is an ordinance establishing pay-to-play restrictions for prospective developers of affordable housing.
Open up for public comment, public hearing. Kerry?
First public comment is James Ianello.
Okay.
Jay Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. I just want to thank you all for doing this. It's long overdue. What's done is done in the past. There's obviously some vivid examples, but this is long overdue. And congratulations. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else in queue? Kerry?
The next public comment is Regina Crissione.
Hello, I also want to thank, Regina Crissione, CRISCIONE, 35 Rambling Brook Drive. I want to also thank you for doing this. My only question is, why is it not for all developers, just for developers of affordable housing?
Is that your only question?
That's my only question.
Okay. Counselor, anything you can fill in for this?
I could simply advise that it was drafted based upon the motion at a previous township committee meeting involving affordable, but we could certainly look at other areas in the future.
Correct. So the motion that was originally made was drafted in concurrence with that. So for this ordinance, it only affects what was asked. The attorney only follows direction provided by the township committee and does not create ordinance on his own.
So can I also make a comment,
Sure.
Mayor? Yeah. So when I did the research, I found specifically political contributions as it relates to COA. So given that we have developers understand that we have an obligation to meet, I didn't want this developers using this as leverage to potentially make political contributions ahead of applying for the COA project. So that's why I initially suggested focusing just on the COA part.
Perfect. Thank you. Carrie, anybody else in queue?
The next public comment is Roberta.
Yes, I'd like some explanation as to.
Roberta, just please state your
okay.
name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Roberta Kaufman, 13 Chestnut Ridge Road. I'm looking for just a little history as to what precipitated this. Years ago, we had a pay-to-play that was much more inclusive. I guess over time, ordinances have removed it, but what precipitated this unique pay-to-play, and what is your intention in terms of getting rid of general pay-to-play?
Commitment Santana, I think you just covered it. You want to repeat yourself, Commitment?
Sure. So after I got appointed to the planning board, I was reviewing an application, and I asked him a question about whether he had made any political contributions, and surely he answered. I mean, I did my own digging as well, and I found evidence to the fact that the developer had made political contributions ahead of a COA application. And I did subsequent research, and I found that there were a lot of potential contributions made ahead of an application. And as a result, I thought it would be good to focus on COA. Yes, we could have broadened this, but at least we want to start somewhere and focus on COA because we have a definite obligation. Developers know this. They think they have leverage, and they seem to have leverage by making these contributions. So that's where it's all started. It was not to exclude other development. It was primarily to start somewhere, since we don't have a pay-to-play ordinance, and we thought it would be good to take a first step.
Thank you. Carrie, anybody else in queue?
There are no other hands up at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Critelli,
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli,
Yes.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Ms. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-16 has been successfully adopted and will be published in the Asbury Park Press according to law.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Let's go through department updates. Administrator.
I have no specific report, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the Township Committee may have.
Perfect. Thank you. CFO, Bill, anything from you? Any updates?
Thank you, Mayor. Just remind everybody, the tax payments are due by May 1st. You have until the 10th, you got a 10-day grace period. You can either pay them through mail. There's a box in front of Town Hall, and you can pay them online. The only thing online, you cannot pay your pilot payments yet online. You can also pay in person by making an appointment at Town Hall. And we would like to remind people that you can also sign up for an automatic withdrawal 4 times a year through ACH. If you look on the township website under the tax office update, there is a link there for auto withdrawal request, which is the simplest way to pay your taxes. There's no charge to any of the taxpayers for that automatic withdrawal.
Thank you.
Yep.
Counselor, any updates?
No update. Good evening, Mayor. No update, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Engineer Ben, any updates from you?
No specific updates today, but again, if there are any questions, be happy to answer.
Perfect. Thank you. I will roll to boards and committees. Committeeman Lucarelli, any updates from you?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have any updates this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Committeeman Santana, any updates?
Yes, I do. So at the last meeting, there were a lot of residents, several residents who were requesting turf fields and asking us to support implementing or installing turf fields. So at that time, we discussed the financials. So after the meeting, I reached out to Sharon and Bill, our CFO Bill, to see if we can do a full financial analysis of what would it cost to install a turf field and what it would cost in today's dollars, meaning what could today's taxpayers expect the cost to be? So because they're going to be footing the bill, whether it's because we're going to incur debt and subsequent debt service costs. So we want to take a full, do a full analysis to see what is the effective cost and what is the total cost of installing a turf field. So I'm going to ask Bill to share with you the analysis that he did, and we can then discuss that.
Sharon, can you put that up? I don't have the ability to do that from my machine.
I'm gonna have to email it to myself. It's on a different machine.
Do you want me to pull that up?
If you have it, yeah.
You have it.
Yes, I have it. Hold on one second. Just give me 1 second, it's loading up.
If our attorney could do it, you could do it.
Okay. All right. So how do I just share my screen?
Yeah.
Can everybody see this?
Yep, it's on now.
Okay. Bill, do you want to explain what we did?
I can pretty much explain on the very bottom of the page, you'll see the actual total cash flows. And this is assuming that we're going to borrow the money at 2%, 2% with a 15-year debt issuance for each level of debt. And what we projected was $1 million purchase in 2020 with a renewal of the turf fields in 29, 37, and the year 45 for the amount of $500,000. If we take that over the period of 2021 through 2050, the actual cash flow going out of the township is $2,460,000. The assumptions, again, we're assuming a 2% bond issue, and each debt issue will be at 15 years. The top number is just the present value of those that cost at 1%, 2%, and 3%.
Yeah. So effectively, what we're saying is that if you install the turf field, the total cash flow, meaning the total payout to install the field, is 2.4. And if you computed what is today's value, what is the value in today's dollars, meaning what is the effective cost to today's taxpayers, assuming either a 1%, 2%, or a 3% discount rate, it boils down to between 1.6 and $2.1 million. So that's the effective cost to today's taxpayers. And that's fair if you have the revenues to support it. But if in the event you don't have those revenues and you're not assured of those revenues, that tantamounts to a potential tax increase. So if you have those revenues in place and they're steady and they're certain, then obviously then we can afford it. So that's the gist of the story. The gist of the story is that while we say it's $1 million, it effectively boils down to $2.5 million in total payout. And it costs somewhere between 1.6 and $2 million for today's taxpayers. I just want this analysis. I wanted to do this because I didn't want people to say, oh, it's only $1 million, because we have to budget for this amount of revenue in the long run. And that's the key, that if you have the revenues to support it, then it's okay. Anything else you want to add, Bill or Sharon?
Well, I have nothing further, except, again, we're just making the assumption that it's every 8 years to replace it. And also that the constant dollars, obviously, probably, the third replacement is probably not going to be $500,000. That could, with inflation, that's probably going to be a higher amount.
Yeah.
But this is just the whole assumption of it's just constant dollars and the interest rate staying stable at 2%, which of course could change over that period of time.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Nope, I don't have anything else, Mayor.
Got it. Thank you. You'll unshare your screen now, I guess.
I'm trying to. I don't know. I don't see an unshare button.
There should be. There.
That's it. Perfect. Thank you. Committeeman Critelli?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Committeeman Santana bringing up the turf field issue. I'd like to give a brief history to the Township Committee of the efforts prior township committees have made to deliver a multi-purpose turf field with lights. Since there has been strong dialogue recently on the subject, I believe the newer members of the Township Committee could benefit from an understanding of what we have tried to do over the last 7 years to identify the right location for a complex of this magnitude. Since 2014, we have looked at 6 different sites in town, all of which I know Mayor Bontempo is familiar with, since he and I are the only long-term members on this committee. First was the Cross Farms Park site in the corner off of Willowbrook Road. Our neighbors living down on the south side of town objected strongly to having lights at this location, so we moved on. Next, we considered Phillips Park before turning this into a baseball-only complex. Limited parking at Phillips Park caused us to look elsewhere. In 2018, I initiated a closer look at the SAT school property where football was practicing on a daily basis. Environmental regulations would have forced the field closer to the SAT school, eliminating parking and causing road reconfiguration, which made it very, very expensive. The TC also looked at negotiating lights at a new field at the high school, but logistics and timing around the school board's 2020 initiative prevented us from moving forward there. The 5th location is the county park property across from Holmdel High School, which is the subject of the land swap with the county. It's questionable as to whether this transaction will be consummated. And of course, we all know there's an issue with public access at that location. Finally, the township considered the property adjacent to the pool club for both an indoor recreation facility as well as a multi-purpose turf field. The rec center concept was scrapped because it was enormously expensive and the turf field concept in 2019 stalled. I've been on this committee for over 8 years, and it's amazing to me that we have not been able to solve the problem of adding a state-of-the-art field to our community to benefit our children who participate in football, lacrosse, and field hockey. I believe this TC should seriously consider delivering a sports complex at the pool club immediately. I recognize Mr. Santana's concern about the money. This town actually has a bid for a multi-purpose field at the pool club, which was presented by a third-party vendor in 2019. The advantages of selecting the pool club site are obvious. The concept plan already exists, and it includes tennis courts, Kathy. Ample parking is already in place. Summer camps can be run in conjunction with the pool club. And remember, we have nearly $700,000 available from the 2019 recreation bond that we haven't used for recreation. Let's stop delaying the decision and give our recreation groups a much needed complex they could utilize this year. The pool club site is the ideal location. I believe we can afford it, knowing that we have pilot money coming for the next 25 to 30 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, Committeeman Critelli, I have a comment about pilot money. I'm always worried about revenues because I don't see them and I'm worried about them, and I'll tell you why. So in 2019, we earned $4 million in total revenue.
Correct.
Pilot revenue. And in 2019, the Toll Brothers site, the Toll Brothers townhomes were at 70% capacity. So that means we got 1.62 million from the Toll Brothers site, which puts Bellworks at 2.38 million from Bellworks. 2.38 at Bellworks at full capacity is supposed to generate $4.8 million. So 2.38 over 4.8 roughly is about 50%. This is in 2019. So in 2019, they were at 50% capacity. Now, in 2020, we billed them the same amount based on audited financial statements from 2019. So if it turns out that in 2020, that they are not at 50% capacity, or that they cannot give us the 4 million, we have to pay the money back to Bellworks. So our revenues start to dip. It's not the 4 million anymore. It's probably considerably less. So my worry is that we are starting to book the revenue that we haven't earned for projects, and especially the pilot project, because we don't see the revenue yet, because we still don't have the audited financial statements from 2020. So
if I could just interject, Committeeman, I don't think you've said anything wrong, but I do want to note that under a redevelopment agreement, under a financial agreement, the entity, in this case Somerset, does provide the township with audited financials. Those are proprietary and protected. So I want to caution against any conversation that's directly speculative on what those finances recite, especially considering the members of the committee would have access to those out of recognition that those are protected, and we're under contract with them under the financial agreement.
Yeah, I just want to make the key point that we may have to return the money if they don't meet if their revenues don't meet the expected revenue that we have already booked based on 2019 audited financial statement. So there is no revenue right now, especially this year. Maybe in the future, I agree with you. If we have a steady revenue stream from Bellworks, sure, I'll be supportive. But right now is not the time.
I respectfully disagree with you, because you're talking about, if you go back to your chart that you showed us, the money on an annual basis seems like it's less than $100,000 on an annual basis. So if we took a hit 1 year, and I don't believe we will, because I'm constantly in touch with the Somerset group, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised that we'll be getting a fair amount of revenue this year and many years into the future, but that's up for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so, but the data doesn't show that. The data shows they were at 50% capacity in 2019. That's my worry.
Thank you.
I have one question for Prakash, and I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but I just want to understand this. It seems you're so extremely concerned about finding revenue for a turf field. And yet but the town is spending close to, I don't know, between $9 and $10 million for a new firehouse, new fire trucks, furnishings, and we're spending, we have money, but it doesn't, like, why aren't you concerned about, or are you concerned about how we're going to find money for that? Or we're able to find money, right? So I don't understand why you're so focused on just a turf field revenue or finding revenue for just a turf field, but yet we can find money for things and we can get things done in this town. And I just don't understand why you're so hyper focused on this specific issue.
Yeah.
In regards to revenue.
Let me interject for a second. Sharon, can you check with our financial planner and just have them provide us for next meeting what our capacity is in terms of bonding? Because there's a limit, right? There's a maximum that we can do without going into, call it the danger zone, for lack of a better term. I just like a third party's recommendation, because I think we're pretty well pushing the envelope, but I'd rather get guidance from them to see what we can afford and what we could, what we can look at, as we go through this budget year.
Sure, I can reach out to them. Just to clarify, are you looking for what we're allowed to bond?
What's our bonding capacity in there?
I mean, Bill might have that. I don't want to put Bill on the spot. I don't know if he has it available.
I've been knocked off, regretfully. I was knocked off the network. I have it, but I can't grab it at the moment.
Okay.
If I could, Mayor, I'm interested in not just what we might be legally capable of bonding for, but what is the recommendation of our CFO in terms of what is sustainable? Because my understanding is that we bonded at extremely high levels for several years in a row, and that now paying off those bonds is a pressure on our operating budget. So I think we have to have both sets of information.
Mind if I answer Committeeman Lucarelli?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Committeeman Lucarelli, I'll tell you the reason why I focused. We had to find the money for a firehouse and a fire truck, and I'll tell you the reason why. You probably know that in starting 2019, our ISO ratings plummeted. Our ISO rating used to be a 5, which is like average or above average. I can't remember exactly what the designation was, but right now it's a 9. So that means it's very bad. And 5 properties were burned to the ground, not just destroyed in a fire.
Please don't misunderstand my question. That has nothing to do with
so
my
I'll tell you
question.
one of the financial reasons, not the emotional part. The financial reason is a lot of people experienced an increase in their homeowners insurance premiums. I, for one, did. Mine went up by $1,000, and I called the insurance company because we hadn't done any work on the house. And I called the insurance company and I grilled them, and I found out it was because of the change in the ISO rating. So that was a net tax payout for me. In addition to the tax that I'm paying, I'm additionally paying $1,000 more for my homeowner's insurance premium. So my goal is not only to save homes and families, but also to provide a net tax benefit or a net payout, a decrease in the net payout. And the goal is to at least help them in an indirect way to lower their homeowners insurance premiums. So that's the end goal. And we can do that. And this is a high priority for everybody. Everybody complains that the taxes are too high. We can provide an indirect benefit at the same time save lives. And that should be a top priority for us. So that's why I was focusing on finding money for the firehouse and
No, but again, that wasn't my question. I don't want to have a back and forth. We can talk offline, but that's not, again, you're really not, I guess, understanding the question, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Deputy Mayor, can I go to you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have several reports. My first report is from the Ad hoc Committee on Human Relations. I am reporting that the committee was unable to reach a consensus on final recommendations, and there will be no final report. My second report is on recreation. Just to remind everyone that swim club registration, early bird registration ends this Sunday. After that, the rates increase $50. So I'm signing up tomorrow, which is my birthday, because I get the senior citizen rate now. So yay. And my third report is that the Traffic and Bike Safety Committee, with support from our fabulous township staff, is going to be recognizing May, because May is National Bike Month. So get your bikes tuned up and ready to go. And anybody wants to go for a ride with me, let me know.
Good, Kath? Thank you. So Deputy Mayor joined me a week ago Saturday for the cleanup. We had a really nice turnout. Thank you, Sharon and staff, for coordinating that. We pulled out lots of garbage, including some tires, literally left on the side of our roads right by Bayonet Farms. So I know DPW, Victor and his crew did a great job picking up the dozens and dozens of bags that were left all over the road. So it was a great turnout. I thank everybody for coming, and thank you for, Sharon and staff for helping coordinate and put that together, and the police for their help in, controlling the traffic that day. Second thing, which is I think very important, is under the governor's recent executive order communicated last week that 16 and 17-year-olds can now get the vaccine. As I noted in the message, they must have a parent or guardian with them when they get their vaccine, but it is available to them. Subsequently, staff was on a conference call, Sharon, yesterday with the county.
Yes.
There is ample supply of vaccine available. We have the information we send out weekly on how to sites you can register at, including the county one. Usually they're saying the turnaround time could be a day to 2 days when you register and be able to go in and get your appointment. They had one day they blocked out because it fell on Memorial Day as the second return day, so they blacked out that day. But other than that, they're running full steam and able to handle more capacity. They're also talking about making sure that for the beach towns that their lifeguards get vaccinated and put them on a priority list, and we're going to submit the names for our lifeguards at the pool and our pool workers to make sure that if they're eligible, they can be included in the program as well. So Sharon and staff are doing a great job in staying on top of on that and keeping the community updated with the program. And obviously we're still available to assist any seniors that need help getting registered, or anybody with any functional disabilities that need any assistance with helping get them registered and set up for vaccine appointments. That is all I have. We can open, Carrie, for any.
Mr. Mayor, could I make one comment before we go to the public?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm interested very much in what Committeeman Curtelli spoke about this evening, and I would like to make a motion that we allow the administrator to present to us the reports that were done and the information that was prepared in 2019 for the turf fields at the pool club, and allow us to discuss it and allow the public to, comment on it and get their feedback.
I'd second that motion. I think that's a good idea. We should at least put it out there and let everybody look at what we've done in the past. Let's discuss.
Why now? Why now? I mean, when we can't do anything about it.
Sure, we can do a lot about it. We haven't passed our budget. We haven't passed our capital. We can adjust that at this point. Everything's on the table right now, Prakash.
So I would appreciate.
I think it's
as
worth
the-
discussion.
As DJ, as the recreation liaison, I have never seen this plan myself. And I would appreciate it going to the recreation committee first so that we can take a look at it, because we're in the process of gathering data right now. And I think we need to look at everything in context. So that would be my recommendation, is that it, this has never been shared. So I think it should go to the recreation committee first. And I would like to see it as well. And look at it again in the context of all the information we're gathering.
So Mike, there's a motion on the table, all right? And the Recreation Committee could obviously see it at the same time as the public. So why don't you entertain that motion and let's see how everybody feels.
So I think what
To the committeeman's question, right now we're in discussion. At the conclusion of that, the mayor will certainly have to call for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
So I think what the deputy mayor discussed at either the last meeting or the meeting prior to that was that taking a more comprehensive look at what all the needs of all the different user groups are in the town. I believe a survey was sent out to try to gather what teams need access to what type of field, when are their needs being met, is there any conflicts, what do you need for practices, what do you need for games. So I think she's going about it in the correct manner in trying to assess what the exact needs are, not rushing to throw a field up just because it's the topic of the day. But I think that, we've waited this long. I don't think waiting a little while longer for her to come back with an analysis and determine what sports need what type of fields, and including in that tennis, I think is important, because we don't have any tennis facilities in town, would also be important. And then we can make an assessment from there based on the report as a committee as to what needs aren't being met and which should go to the top of the list. And then we could assess from there, and then also give the administrator time to continue to communicate with the county on potentially using the land across from the high school as a facility for a future field, in addition to what we're looking at right now. So I would hold on anything until we get additional information.
Mayor, there's not a motion on the table to build a complex. There's a motion on the table, and I don't want to speak for DJ, but I think all he wants to do is come forward and show the concept plan that was prepared by.
Yeah, that's just to get it out there so that everyone can see what was done or what was prepared. That's all.
DJ, is this plan you're referencing the $2 million plan that Mayor Hines tried to pull through a couple of years ago? Is that what you're talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, but is that it?
Yeah, I think there's only one plan, Kathy. I mean, you can call it whatever you
I've
want.
never seen it.
I've never seen it either. So there's obviously a plan that was done. I know that there was a study done. I mean, we were told that. So if it's there, I would like to be able to review it and at least let us see it and let the public see what was proposed up there. That's all. I just wanted just for discussion.
Go to the recreation committee first, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I mean, you can get it anytime you want, I guess. If Sharon can release it, we can authorize her to release it and put it on the agenda, then you can get it whenever you want.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it seems strange that you wouldn't send it to the Recreation Committee because they're currently working on looking at things comprehensively. And after that, you can choose to release it to the public. That's not an issue at all. But it seems strange that you want to subvert the current process.
No, absolutely not.
Hold on, I'm not done yet. Current process they're going through in evaluating what's a top priority. Why wouldn't you provide this information and say, since no one has looked at it, why wouldn't you provide this information and say, take a look at this and include whatever's mentioned in this, and then release it to the public? That's fine.
So what are you suggesting?
hold on again, hold
To
on.
the
hold on.
Recreations Committee,
Hold on,
Recreation
guys, let me
Committee.
just jump in. It's not that it has to be released to the public. I believe it was part of an agenda in 2019, and the concept plan was part of what Field Turf actually was bidding on. So if you guys
No.
haven't seen it, I'm sure
It's
it's in
never on a public
it's in
agenda.
the
Tom. I
public.
never saw it.
Sharon could get her hands on it and you guys could see it in advance. So all I'm saying is the public should have a chance to comment on it.
Absolutely.
but
After the recreation
We have worked
committee.
for years to have a concept plan for a field. Greg and I have gone through 6 different locations. We've paid engineers to do concept plans, whether it was Mazer Consulting, T&M Associates. I can see the mayor's nodding his head, so he agrees with me. Why are we hiding behind this? Let's just put it on the agenda, show the public, show the recreation committee, show the user groups what can be built up there, and let's have a conversation. I was going to bring this up in private session today, but there was no executive session. So let's stop ducking and bobbing and weaving, Kathy.
So why didn't you?
Excuse me.
Committee.
I don't need to
Let's
be
have a
attacked.
discussion.
I don't need to be attacked here, Tom.
I'm not attacking. I'm just telling you.
Yes, you are. Now stop
Okay,
it.
fine.
So real quick, guys. So Sharon, any document like this would be an operable document to begin with, correct?
It would be, it might be on the website already. I'm
Maybe on the
not
website
sure.
already. So we already have the document. Anybody can get access if they want it. If I'd like Kathy to get it and the township committee to get it. So why don't we go, Sharon, for step number 1, right, to get the document or documents to the recreation committee for their next meeting and the township committee to review before we go to the public. So everybody in the township committee has a chance to review it prior to being released to the public.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ.
Right? And then
I
we go.
really want, so, I just want to make one more comment. I think part of the reason there've been 6 iterations and nothing's gotten done is because many of these proposals have been shot from the hip and not thoroughly vetted and not done in context. And I am trying to do this the right way. I want to get it right. And I want to get all the information and come up with the correct proposal that can be successfully implemented. I do not want to get out ahead of ourselves, as has happened numerous times in the past with promising things we can't deliver. I think we need to figure it out and make sure that we have buy-in and then be able to follow through and deliver. I do not want to throw proposals around again like spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. I want to do it the right way. So I thank you for allowing us to vet this through the Recreation Committee, which is actively engaged and working on this. And our Recreation Director, Bob Ward, is putting in a ton of time and effort, gathering all the relevant data so we can find out what is the best approach for once and for all. Thank you.
When's the next Recreation Committee meeting?
In a couple of weeks.
It's Monday.
Monday, good. So you can have it on Monday. And I think we should keep the motion on the floor and have this plan released at the first meeting in May.
So your meeting on Monday, you can present it on Monday, and then we can have it, if we can put it for our next meeting on the agenda.
I will report on the Recreation Committee meeting at the next Township Committee meeting, as I always do.
So we could, it could be on our, is it possible it's on our website right now, Sharon?
I believe it was on the April 9th, 2019 meeting agenda, which is posted on our website under minutes and agendas. That meeting did not happen, but the agenda items on that meeting are posted on our website.
That's correct.
We're more than happy to.
If I could just,
send that
if
to the
I
township
could
committee.
just interject, I'll be assisting the administrator. I think it's publicly known that there were various meetings later on that year that looked into the due diligence that was or was not done prior. There were several OPA requests that were filed that produced documents relevant to that. I'll work with her. If there's anything and everything that is relevant to what the committee's asking about, we'll get that to you.
Perfect. And then if it's on the website, it's accessible by anybody, correct, Counselor?
If that's the desire of the township, and it's a public document, it could certainly be placed there.
It's a.
There. Now, I'm looking at it.
That's correct. The agenda is on the website that, for April 9th, 2019. And
I mean, the agenda was
posted.
a line item that referenced this field, which was,
Correct.
I think the committee is looking for the due diligence supporting that, if I'm not mistaken, and whatever was compiled will get to the committee.
Could I ask you a question, Counselor?
Sure.
So the April 19th meeting, you said it's mentioned, I don't have it in front of me. It's a line item you said. Is that the one that was in the
Pour me a
consent
big
agenda?
glass of ice and leave it on the bar.
I'm sorry? Oh, he was not on mute. Anyway, was that the line item that was embedded in the consent agenda, the $2 million turf field? Is that the agenda that we're talking about?
I'm not the one referencing the agenda, so.
But if I remember right, it was April 19th. That was the meeting.
That does sound like the meeting in which this item was listed on a draft agenda that issued, and subsequently that meeting, as the administrator noted, did not happen for lack of a quorum.
Exactly. And okay, so I just want to make sure that I understood. They're referencing the agenda item related to the consent agenda issue that came up back in April 2019.
I believe that was the only turf field we looked at that year, Prakash. That's correct, the pool club.
So I'm gonna keep my motion because it seems like, the timeline works for the committee to review this prior to the next meeting.
So
I second that motion.
So the motion is to have a public discussion on the field that was already created, or wait for the Recreation Committee to come up with their report?
I guess I would like to have it on the next meeting so we could discuss it, but not to have any decisions made until the Rec Committee makes a recommendation.
So anybody can comment on any of the public items, so it's not an ordinance, it's not a resolution, right? So it's just a topic that so I think if we put it on our website, people can view it, and then if there's any public comment, we could have on the public comment section, right? We're not doing a resolution, we're not doing an ordinance on it, so I don't know how else it would be on the agenda.
The public information display, that's all. We've done it before, Greg. We've done it for the firehouse. We've done it for, other recreation projects. It's just
Yeah, and again, I would wait until Recreation has their recommendations to have a public presentation. But I think you can certainly share the information on the website now. And I would like to see the information. That would be wonderful.
I disagree. There's a motion and a second. Let's vote on it.
Okay, let's vote.
Mayor,
Yes,
should I do roll call?
go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Vitale,
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli,
Yes, please.
Mr. Santana,
No,
Ms. Weber,
No.
Mayor Bontempo.
I'll abstain.
Motion fails in that case.
Greg, why would you abstain? It's either a yes or a no.
can I make a comment here?
Good.
So the vote no is not against sports or turf fields. I don't want people to start spinning this. This is a vote for decorum. We have a committee that's been tasked with analyzing comprehensively what are the priorities for recreation. What we're doing by passing this resolution is clearly subverting the goals, the committee. And why would we want to do this when we have a committee in place?
Because I think the public has
hold on a second.
Okay.
It's like saying we have a finance committee, and meanwhile, you just show up and say we want to pass a bond, and let's display what the associated costs are without actually allowing the finance committee to vet the process. So you're basically undermining a committee that you voted to keep in place. So it's not the right way to approach any work on this committee, on the township committee. We should not be doing this. We should follow proper decorum.
No, I completely disagree with you, Prakash. You don't decide what the decorum is. I mean, I think the public should know what is there, what has been prepared, what we've already paid for, what our options are. I think that it should be seen by the public and the rec committees. I think they should have an opportunity to see what is actually there for us to work with. And I'm not saying that that is the right thing to do or it's the wrong thing to do. I'm not saying that at this time. I just think it's an option that should be reviewed and discussed amongst us. That's all. I am not circumventing any process at all.
No, but DJ, the point I'm trying to make is we're not saying we should not be transparent, because I strongly believe in transparency and we should share it with the public. That's not the issue here at all. The issue here is there's a committee tasked with the goal of finding out priorities related to recreation. And
because we know what we need. I mean, the committee can, they can talk all they want, but trust me, the town knows what they need, and the committee is doing a great job, I'm sure, because I'm sure Kathy is doing a wonderful job with that. But that's not the needs aren't gonna change. Okay.
So PJ, I would respectfully disagree. And I would just want to say, I feel blindsided by this motion because it was not brought to my attention or to the committee's attention. And I feel the committee is the one to give us the data and information we need on what the needs are. And I don't think I know better than all the sports leaders in this community. I think they know best. And that's who's on the committee. And I want to hear from them and get their information so we can make the decision. I do not want to hide information, but apparently this plan has been hidden from the public for the past, almost 2 years now. So I fully recommend that we put the items up on the website for anyone to view. But I don't believe we should have a discussion about the pros and the cons and who wants what and who doesn't want what until we have the assessment of the needs from the Recreation Committee. So I just want to make it clear that my no vote was not no about sharing the plan itself. I think that should go up on the website. I think there should be full transparency. It was about following the process and respecting our sports leaders and our Recreation Advisory Committee and getting the full information from them, because I don't think we know better.
I'm just sick of wasting time, Kathy. It's been 7 years. We know what they need. They know what they want. And I'm just trying to make this get done.
So wait a minute. Mr. Critelli was in charge of the Recreation Committee last year. Why did he not bring it up back then? Why now? When we have a committee dedicated to looking at the priorities, and you're undermining the committee by not providing the information to the committee first. Why all of a sudden, this seems like a political process here, instead of doing it the right way. It's a clear, blatant political process.
It's not political at all for me, Prakash. I've been doing this for over 8 years. The recreation community understands my commitment to sports and recreation improvements. I myself installed the lights that exist today in Phillips Park 21 years ago. My company did that at a charity. I'm the one who initiated the $2.5 million worth of recreation improvements when I was mayor. Last year, besides the pandemic coming upon us, I was defending myself from attacks by you, which was a bunch of bullshit, and you know that. So I was a little preoccupied.
Language, please.
There wasn't much recreation being discussed last year. So it's not political for me. I have 8 months remaining, and I'd like to see us do the right thing for the children in this town. And I know there's a lot of people listening that are going to comment about the children, but I don't have any children in the program. I don't have any grandchildren in the program. I'm trying to do something for the next 2 or 3 generations of the children in this town. That's the bottom line for me.
Anything else? Now, Carrie, my mouse just broke again. Now, Carrie will roll to public comment.
The first public comment is Rocco Impreveduto.
Hi, Rocco Impreveduto, 18 Winthrop Drive. I have two, one's a comment and I guess one's maybe more of a question. Committeeman Santana, I actually very much appreciate the diligence you've put in on the costs related to the costs on turf fields. I think it's extremely helpful and I appreciate the transparency. When I look at that, and I understand the concern around revenues and absolutely understand the concern around taxes and the impact to the community. But when I look at that, it averages out to about $83,000 a year over a 30-year period, which, you know, if the township budget were to remain at around $25 million, you know, means that it's going to account for 0.3%, if I'm not mistaken, of the total township budget. That cost doesn't seem prohibitive to me. So I'm just curious, you know, Committeeman Critelli, if you think it's prohibitive, Committeeman Santana, Mayor Bontempo, any one of you want to, you know, respond to that. I'm just curious as to sort of if you think that cost is too high or too low to move forward. And I think that the second comment is, and I think we were alluding to it, but I don't know that I heard it explicitly said, was that there was a survey conducted for all user groups in the community a few years back. I know we've talked about a plan. I'm not talking about the plan. I'm really more talking about the survey conducted for user groups and what that survey revealed and what deficiencies, if any, the committee saw in that survey and why they would see fit the need to do another. And I guess maybe that's more directed towards Committeeman Critelli and Mayor Bontempo as they have the tenure. At the end of the day, I think what we, you know, I have 3 kids. Only one is really actively involved in sports. So this isn't a sports thing for me. It's a kids, it's a recreation, it's a getting outside thing for me in terms of how this all works. But I think what we do know is when there's the will to do something, you find a way to get it done. And I think members of the community, myself included, would like to see this get done. So that I'll leave it at that with a minute and a half left on my timer.
Okay. Mayor, do you mind if I respond?
No, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Impreveduto. Appreciate the question. Just so you know, I have a daughter as well who plays lacrosse, and we send her to Good Sport in Long Branch and pay $100 every season so that she can use the facility there because we don't have an enclosed facility here or a turf field here. So just so you know that in the event you end up spending the money for a turf field in the absence of revenue for other high priority initiatives, what you'll end up doing is potentially increasing the tax, especially on those who have no use for these fields, specifically seniors. So there are a lot of seniors in this town who may support it, but not at the expense of a tax increase. So the goal here is to say, do we have the money? And when we have the money, we should definitely do it, but do we have the money? This year is a tough year. And this year is a tough year because of the COVID situation. We don't know what we're going to get from Bell Works. So to start booking right now is, in my opinion, not a good idea. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, when we know we have a steady stream of revenues, and there are obviously going to be high priority items like road repair, like, I don't know, whatever else. But we need to make sure we have the revenues to support it. And that's important to understand. Otherwise, you will be asking for a tax increase on those people like the seniors who have no use for the facility.
So, you know, we did a lot. If we circle back to 2019 and the people that were following the township committee at the time, so that we did a fairly in-depth investigation of what actions transpired that generated the planning of a field that was never approved in public or by the township committee. So there were boxes and boxes of documents that we came up with. So all those we presented out in public before. So in an effort to, be completely transparent with everything that's gone on and how taxpayer money was spent without proper approvals, I would be more than happy to make the motion that all the documents from the 2019 investigation regarding the turf field go on the website and be made public so anybody could access them. The township committee could access them, the rec committee could access them, and the public could access them and see everything that took place and some of the correspondence that took place as well. That was probably, without support. So I'll make the motion. If anybody wants to support it, we'll put it on the website.
I'll second the motion.
You do a roll call, please, Wendy?
Mr. Gratelli?
Just a question for our counselor. Don't we have a agreement in place with a former employee that precludes some of that information possibly from being released?
Anything involving personnel, we certainly would not post, committeemen. I would make sure that anything that's posted is disclosable under Oprah.
Okay, that's fine. And this has to do, Greg, your motion is for recreation improvements in 2019?
For all the turf,
recreation investigation?
all the documents from the engineering firm, the planner, where was involved, and everything, so public can see everything that was done, everything was created. They could, have access to everything out there in complete transparency. We made it public in 2019. Let them have access to everything right now, so they could see everything that's been done, and they could see what was done without authorization from the township committee as well.
Well, it's already been out in the public, so I'm fine with it.
Yep.
Mr. Lucarelli? Oh,
Just to
sorry.
clarify, given everything, is that a yes vote, committeeman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes. Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Carrie, anybody else in queue?
The next public comment is Natalie and Michael Klobuchar.
Hi, yes, this is Natalie and Michael Klobuchar at 4 Hastings Road. We are here tonight to voice our support for an additional turf field in Holmdel. I personally have served in a volunteer capacity as the boys lacrosse scheduler for the past 3 years, and I can tell you from experience how difficult it is to arrange games when so much of our season falls during the rainy months. This season alone, we've already lost a number of games due to closure at Cross Farms. In the past 2 weekends, we've only been able to play a fraction of those games on the turf at the high school in the rain due to Cross Farms closures. And that required the kindergarten to 2nd grade clinic to be canceled altogether. So not only does it reduce our playing time, it impacts our development programs when they're kicked off the turf so that our games can be played. Other towns that have turf fields are also at an advantage in that they are able to get on the turf and begin their seasons earlier in the year when Cross Farms is closed for us. Another turf field would have a tremendous impact on our youth lacrosse programs, as well as so many other programs in our town. When I was looking at this spreadsheet, as I understand it, it looked like the highest yearly cost would be $130,000 shown tonight. If you divide that by 16,000 residents, we're talking about $8 per person per year, which, I personally would be willing to accept in a tax increase. Furthermore, it seems that the recreational committee should be proactive in looking at a proposal that was placed in April of 2019. And it seems more like a ploy to delay progress by saying that they haven't seen it up until now, or need to see it now. I'm just another voice here to say that we are a family with children in this town that, fully supports a proposal to get turf in Holmdel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
The next public comment is Ron Emma.
Ron Emma, 32 Ladwood Drive. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the need for a multi-purpose turf field for our kids. And I underline our kids. That would be for the use of Holmdel kids, not for the use of outside private clubs. I'd like to remind the committee, the township's committee's #1 priority is our public safety. It was intimated tonight that I just want to remind you, please don't equate public safety with recreation. Police, EMS, and fire has to come first before a turf field. That's to me, that's a line in the sand. And I think the money to refurbish the first aid squad has to be approved prior to the turf field being considered. I actually like Committeeman Quitelli's comment about the pool club because we actually own that already. That makes more sense to me if we are going to proceed with it versus the land swap because of the Green Acres issue and the cost involved with doing that land swap. So I think the pool club makes more sense because we actually own it. Prakash, I'd like to ask you a question. On your chart, you had $1 million on there. Does that $1 million apply to the land at the pool club? Because we actually own that already. That's #1. And then secondly, there was a comment made by Committeeman Lucarelli that the town knows what we need. I would remind everyone, the town does know what we need, as evidenced by the results of the recreation survey done 2 years ago. And turf fields was not in the top 10. Again, I acknowledge the need for turf fields for all sports, but it's got to be done in an open and transparent manner. And we shouldn't be hyper-focused, to use your words, on just turf fields not in an open and transparent way. Again, EMS, fire have to come first prior to, looking at money for turf fields. Thank you very much. Prakash, could you comment on that $1 million that I referenced for the pool club property?
You're on mute.
Could I make a comment?
Okay.
Can I make a comment? Yeah, okay. So the analysis that we did assumed that the initial investment for the turf field was $1 million, not for the land, but the turf itself. And then to replace it or repair it, we, based on our engineers, information from our engineers, it's about $500,000. It's not the full cost, but $500,000 every 8 years, roughly. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Mayor, can I please just respond to Mr. Emma or just clarify something that maybe he didn't understand that I said?
Sure.
So thank you. So again, Mr. Emma, I just wanted to clarify the fact of I don't want you to misconstrue my comments. And we all know, and it's a fact, that fire, first aid, and first responders always come first. My comment to Mr. Santana was that I felt like he was hyper-focused on the revenue that it would cost us for a turf field, and that we are spending close to $9 to $10 million in last year and this year on the other services, and that there seems to be no concern from him on where that money is going to come from. That was my only question to him. He didn't even answer it. And I just want you to be clear that that is what I was asking, and in no way, shape, or form putting recreation ahead of first aid or first responding services. So just to be clear, thank you.
Okay, could I make a comment? I did not respond to that question. I thought I did. I thought I articulated.
I apologize, Prakash. You responded. You didn't answer my question. That's all that's what I meant.
Okay, I thought I answered your question by saying that, yes, it's a huge increase in our debt service costs, but these are high priority items And not only because it protects families, it also provides a potential tax incentive where we're helping the residents pay less in their homeowners insurance premiums. So it's a double positive. On one hand, you're saving lives. On the other hand, you're actually providing an indirect tax benefit.
My only question, Prakash, is why you didn't prepare a report on how we're going to pay for that versus preparing a report on how we're going to pay for a turf field. That is my only question to you. You still haven't answered it, and I don't even want an answer at this point. It's okay, but thank you.
I thought Siobhan showed it last meeting. She showed you the debt service cost. She showed you the cost that how much it costs to bond for the fire truck, for the firehouse. Everything was in that report. And that's why I didn't prepare, because I was going to basically regurgitate whatever is in that report.
Okay, thank you, Prakash.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie, anybody else in queue?
The next public comment is Sheila Gilstein.
Sheila Gilstein, 11 Chardonnay Drive. I really want to respond to Mr. Critelli. He seems to say that it's 7 years of working on the turf fields, but he seems to forget that 700 residents sued the town in 2016 because some people knew what was best for others. And it turned out that having a turf field across Farm Park was not best for others. In addition, in 2018, the recreation survey was completed by Holmdel Township, indicating that the majority of Holmdel residents wanted more passive recreation, such as walking, biking, and hiking. Fewer than 6% of the respondents included synthetic turf fields. So I really don't feel that people now know what the other people want. The third point I really would like to make is that when I've Oprah'd T&M, their recreation engineering reports, what they have done is they will state the fees, and they're very exacting. So it's very clear what they're spending the money on, but they always do something called a draft. And in that draft, it is not operable. You are not allowed to see what they wrote. So I'm very curious to see what you'll see in 2019 of that Oprah, because many of their things were drafts and the public was not allowed to see. I would comment, the last thing is that the Recreation Committee needs to do their job. They are in the midst of it, and it's very important that you allow us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Carrie?
The next public comment is Kevin Buchan.
Oh, no.
Probably didn't say that right.
How you doing? Kevin Buchan, 26 Randall Road. A couple questions. I did appear before the rec committee, and I got to agree with Committeeman Lucarelli and Critelli. I think the rec committee needs to obviously move a little bit faster, A, and B, whatever reports are available, there's no reason that we should be hiding them. The public should see them immediately. I don't see any reason why we don't have complete transparency. And my other issue is with the 2018 recreation bond. I know that there is money left over. How much is it? Where is it? And what are we doing with it? We're talking about a huge cost. And my understanding is there's a large amount of money left over that we're not using.
Well, Mayor, I'll just point out that it's about $670,000 that we haven't used in the last 2.5 years.
But I think roughly 200,000 is going to be coming back for reimbursement, I believe, from the Alaco Park.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So the total, which we'll have access to, is that much money. We might not have that much in our bank right now, but that's what we'll have access to.
Correct.
So isn't that going to be coming off? I mean, when we're talking about a cost, can't that money be applied towards what we're talking about? And again, when somebody's comment previously was, we don't know what the town needs. I think we do. I mean, it's been 7 years, and I can tell you that everybody that I come in contact with, and we have close to 300 kids playing lacrosse, everybody's asking about facilities. What are we doing? How are we getting it done? I'm making a concerted effort to be on these meetings as often as I can, so it's not forgotten. There are a lot of people who would greatly benefit from this. I understand we do a lot for the seniors, we do a lot for the fire department, and I'm not suggesting we don't do that. It's just recreation and the kids always get pushed behind. It doesn't make any sense. And frankly, we need new leadership if they think that's the answer here.
Is that all your comments, Kevin?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
The next public comment is James Yanello.
Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. I just have to observe for some of the newer voices we're seeing on here and are aghast that we have got nothing done. I wish you could have participated in the 6 or 7 years worth of meetings and some of the sham things that have gone down as some of these projects were put forward in some really shady ways and unscrupulous ways. But with that said, the idea of a legitimately done, unlike the last one, which was then subsequently called a no-brainer, a legitimately done turf field with light towers at the pool club is something I think a lot of people in the community can get their hands around if we can afford it. Mr. Santana, I would appreciate if at some point we could maybe have a 5-year budget outlook. What's the debt level of town over the 5 years? What's our projection of Bell Works revenues over 5 years and everything else? And then everyone, the pro turf, the anti-turf, everyone could see pretty clearly how the numbers are looking. You get that from top companies on Wall Street. I think it's high time. Ms. Sharon did a wonderful PowerPoint last time. Why can't we get a 5-year projection budget with debt and everything else? I guess I'm a little taken aback by it being May and we still don't have the numbers for Bell Works. I love Bell Works. I think it's phenomenal. My daughter benefits greatly from it working there. I guess I'm pretty surprised we don't have numbers there. Why can't we get mid-year numbers? Why don't we know what the numbers are going to look like this year? As far as Miss Weber, please continue your work. I think if we're going to have a turf field, if we can afford one, who really needs to use it? Football, lacrosse, field hockey was mentioned tonight. Obviously, in the past, soccer's been pushing for this. Who is going to use it? What percentage of each are going to use it? What Mr. Emma said, how many out-of-towners are going to use it? And if the private clubs are going to use it, particularly the ones that have vast sums of money on their balance sheet, they should pay. And that has to be absolutely worked out and determined before we have the 9th dog and pony show where you put up a turf field and the usual cast of characters. I could write their scripts right now, come up to the mic and do their own. We need it. We need it. We need it for the kids. Let's legitimately see who needs it and who should pay for it. Finally, is there any update on New Jersey natural gas? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. No, Council, no new update on the New Jersey gas litigation, correct?
Correct, Mayor, no update. We are awaiting a decision from the administrative law judge.
Yep. Thank you.
Mayor,
May-
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment on the Bell Works pilot. We haven't received their audited financial statements. We do expect that relatively soon. Last year they were delayed because of COVID, and this year that might be the same reason for the delay. The other thing I just wanted to mention is our annual debt service is in the budget narrative that I presented. The full extent until the end of what we currently have is in the document called 2021 budget presentation and narrative. And then in the PowerPoint, I did an abbreviated version just to help clarify it for some people. So our debt service, our debt service as of today is available to anyone. They're all on the website under the finance department and budget.
Perfect.
Could I make a comment, Mayor?
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to add on to what our administrator said. Our debt service costs projected for the next 5 years based on our current debt is available. This is what she presented at the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, which showed how we are at roughly about $3.5 million in debt service costs and increasing. So that's what she presented, and I wanted to point that out. In terms of revenue, I mean, I agree with you, Mr. Yanello. We need to be able to predict or forecast our revenues so we can start to work on, allocating money towards a turf field, et cetera. We're not there yet because of two reasons. One, because of the pandemic, and two, because of this unknown called Bellworks. We have no idea whether we're going to give money back or not. And that's the issue. Until we get to a steady state, it's going to be very tricky to forecast revenues.
There's also potential that we're going to have some other commercial negative impacts on our tax base going forward. So it's not just Bellworks. There's other issues coming into play with from the commercial / retail side of our township. So more to come. As we get more information, we'll certainly share it. Carrie?
The next public comment is Jerry Buffalino.
Jerry Buffalino, 20 Barbera Drive, Holmdel, New Jersey. I would like to make a comment regarding Bellworks. I am on the finance committee, as most of you know. I think 2021 is probably going to be the year where we're going to see the biggest impact. And I say that because they probably received federal assistance in 2020, like everybody else did as a business. That's my thinking. And of course, as our attorney pointed out, if we're not able to actually see their financial statements, we won't know for sure what the impact was. I'm talking about the finance committee, not Bill and Sharon. So my guess is the biggest problem may be coming, not behind us with this thing, because if their rental streams have been impacted last year and they're not revived again, that's where you're going to see it in 2021, not 2020. 2020 probably will be down, but my guess is it won't be as down as severe as we think, because they were able to get the assistance from the government that were offering business owners loans and things like that. He's got a lot of debt on that facility, from what I recall, and he has had to keep up his loan services as well, besides paying his pilot payments. So we need to keep that in perspective. And secondly, I think the town bet the ranch on AT&T at one time, and look what happened. We thought that was never going to go away, right? $5 million worth of ratables there, and it went away. It disappeared into thin air, and everybody's taxes here took a huge hit on that. So I'd warn you against relying on one source of revenue for everything. 10 years from now, it could be totally different. We might not even conceive of what could happen there. Thirdly, everybody seems to think we need another turf field. Okay, I get it. However, the cost is something we need to talk about, because the users of those fields, because they're very expensive to maintain and build over a long period of time as well, need to be subsidized in some way by the people that are using them. I mean, Capelli, if you go down and see what's going on there right now, he's doubling the size of his facilities because it's hugely profitable. So I don't know if any of the town residents have been down there paying for those things, but it's a commercial operation charging a price for the same services our youth groups are asking for free from the town. That's not right. The general taxpayers shouldn't be footing the bill for extracurricular activities outside of the school system. We already, 2/3 of our taxes already go to pay the schools. So if you do decide on a turf field, whether it's at the swim club or somewhere else, I think you need to consider how to charge for that appropriately to cover the debt service cost over a period of years. And you probably can do it, I'm sure, because you have quite a few number of people that want to use it.
Your time is up. I'm sorry. Gary?
Next public comment is Terrence Wall.
Good evening, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, great. Terrence Wall over at 170 La Quinta. Appreciate all the time you invested in that role. I'm quite familiar with it, and your volunteering your time is really important. So thank you for that.
I'll move pretty quickly on this. I'll just pivot off of Jay and Ella's comment on the pool location for a potential turf field. I think that's if it fits into that footprint, I should say, I think that's well worth exploring if it's controlled by the township. The second item on the budget, you can absolutely fund a turf field if you chose to do so. I've looked at your budgets. I understand your budgets. I've done 21 years of them. So from a municipal standpoint, that's to me a red herring. I think if you chose to do it and you wanted to do it, you certainly could. And that's coming at it from a professional standpoint, doing budgets. The other item I wanted to mention was just to kind of give your framework. When it clicked for me with lacrosse, rather, this is lacrosse oriented. My twins do play lacrosse. They love it. But it didn't quite click for me about the value of a turf field until we were in Toms River a couple of years ago. And it was interesting. The girls were playing, I think they were 9 years old. Maybe, I think it was a year or two ago or so. And it started pouring rain. Pouring rain. And what was really interesting about it is that they were playing in the rain, and all of the girls, they were having an incredible time. And at the same time, I started getting the messages from Holmdel and the various folk, our local fields, that everything was shut down. And it really crystallized it for me. That's why I'm sharing you this story. I saw two girls and all the other teammates having an absolute fantastic time, thoroughly enjoying themselves, and Holmdel was shut down. And it made it really clear the value of a field that doesn't get shut down. So I'm just giving you a weather example. And I think it's really worth considering Holmdel being more open for business for the children. And I just want to share that example with you. I do think you guys can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think there may be some what I'm hearing from this call, old hurts and old, political bruising, that I would say, look at the kids and look beyond the what ends up being a kind of a narrow framework. And I'll leave you a concept while you're thinking about that. Consider the Rogie model. Many years ago, when Rogie was done, it was a capital campaign where there was a fundraising component, and then it was coupled with funding from the municipality. It was a partnership. So I think you can do it. I hope you guys move beyond the bruising from the past and do something great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment. Terry?
The next public comment is EB.
Hi, this is Chris Priamonti, 30 Falcon Ridge Circle, Holmdel, New Jersey, with a note. So first thing I want to say is to all of you, please don't spend any more of that $700,000 that you have. That money was meant to be spent on our recreation fields. Many of us fought for that for years, and we finally got it accomplished. So please don't go spending it on anything else other than recreation fields. Secondly, I'm starting to wonder if some people actually understand how recreation sports are run in this town, and who's behind them, and who does all the work, and all the volunteers, and where the money comes to run those sports. Because I think some people don't know, okay? Especially some people on this sitting township committee. Our sports are self-funded. Our users, our families pay fees so that we can have sports and athletic activities for our kids. All we ask for is a place to play. That's all we ask the township committee for, is a place to play. We don't ask you to organize referees. We don't ask you to go find coaches. We don't ask you to schedule our games and our seasons. We don't ask you for insurance. We have our own. We don't ask you for anything. We don't ask you to run our registration. We handled all of that ourselves. All we ask is for a place to play. Mr. Santana, you keep saying, why now, why now? This is not political. I've been fighting for this forever. It's always why now with some of you. Every kid, if COVID has taught us anything, every kid in this town should have access to athletic facilities where they can get outside and play. And we don't have that now. And a lot of what we have is actually indoors, run for and paid for by our schools, not by the township committee, and by, again, our users and our families. I've now heard from Mr. Santana and a member of the community that if we build a turf field, we should pay for it. We should pay for rent on our own turf field. The users, the kids, the families of Holmdel. Now you want to send us that bill? Are you kidding me? I think we pay enough taxes in this town. I sure know I pay enough property taxes in this town that my kids should have a place to go and play. And it's not even my kids, by the way, with the note, because my kids are out of HYA. They're out of the system. It's for the people behind me. And that's who I'm voting for. That's who my cousin, Tom Critelli, is pushing for. We're trying to do it for the people behind us because our kids are gone. And it's the right thing to do. Stop spending the $700,000 until you get figured out on the turf field. And the idea that you're going to bill us for it is ridiculous. We pay to run our own sports. We volunteer our own time. We do everything. The township does nothing but give us dirt and lines. What do you give us? We just want proper facilities for our kids. And it ain't political. The people who say it's political, why now, why now, why now? You're the political ones.
Your time is up.
Not the people who want proper facilities for our kids. It's long enough.
Thank you. Gary, yeah, end it.
The next public comment is Joe Crowley.
Hi, this is Joe Crowley, 15 Ely Road. I want to say a couple things quickly. I have and always have supported police, fire, EMS. Nobody's disputing the need for that. There was mentions about Cross Park. I was at the first meeting years and years ago where Jay Iannello made his debut. I went there out of concern of 10 soccer fields in my neighborhood, and I shut up because I didn't need to say anything because of what Jay said. So people talking about cross farms and things like that, and it's a distraction at best. Having been involved in this for years, and again, my kids are in college and gone. There is certainly a value to and a lot of information available over anybody who's attended these meetings over the years and heard people ask for fields. So there is a clear need for this. I am disturbed by people who have talked about the need for transparency from others, and then voted against making information available to the public, especially when the committee would have had it in advance of that. You can assess that for yourself. And regarding Mr. Santana's stuff, it was an extraordinarily unbalanced presentation. It was out of context. There were assumptions that were not documented as to what the costs were. There was no comparison of alternatives. Other fields cost money. Grass fields cost money. They cost maintenance. And there's an opportunity cost due to the fact that our kids can't use those fields. And certainly fields have a value to our community, a financial value to our community, in that they improve the attractiveness of our community to parents with children who want to move here. It's not just our school system. More and more sports facilities are becoming important. And to say that people are going to bear the burden and not use it, I mean, you might say the same thing of the senior center. As a community, we all benefit from the things that improve our community. And to hear people speak about things that are high priority, like roads, without any context, our kids are high priority also. I think any balanced assessment would not have focused entirely on costs, and it wouldn't have been out of the context of the total budget as well. I find it, and I know my time is up, I just find it stunningly unbalanced to not consider the the benefits and not put this in the context of the broader budget.
Thank you, Jerry. Time is up.
Thank you.
Could I make a quick comment, Mayor?
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to be clear. I thought Bill presented all the assumptions in the analysis. Our CFO presented all the assumptions in the analysis. Quickly, I'll run down the list of assumptions. If need be, we can provide you that data as well. So $1 million for the initial investment, 500,000 as replacement costs every 8 years, 2% in interest rate for our debt, and our discount rate to compute the net present value, we assume 1%, 2%, and 3%. And we showed you all the stats.
Thank you. Carrie?
There are no other hands up at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. None being seen, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?